thinking about that.
Something with a lot of rock and roll music and drums, and you know,
That
we're
would
live.
work. Yes.
Exactly.
There
Something
we
like
go.
we need like the Lone Ranger theme or something.
Bum, 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 Bonanza in the
Bonanza.
background. Hey, this is our intro. This is our streaming intro, guys. We're live on The Power of You
Yes.
with
Once
Dolan
again,
and Blaine Bartlett. I'm Blaine Bartlett.
I'm Dolan White. Welcome to the
And
Power of You.
We're live.
Yes.
And hopefully you are too.
Yeah. Yeah. Please be.
Because that's
Oh,
going
you
to
said
be the.
you said live, not alive. There
No,
you go.
I
All
said
right.
live. Yes,
There
I
you
said
go.
live.
Okay. Different.
You may be
Oh,
watching this as a pre-record or as a post-recording, but in that case, we
yes.
hope you are alive.
Yes. If you're here for post recording, quickly set it to 1.25 playback, and you're good to go. There you go.
Don't try this at home. We are trained professionals.
Yeah. Cool.
Hey, this is going to be an interesting one. For those of you that are just tuning in, the Power of You series, Dolan and I decided to start doing something like this about 2 months ago. I think it was.
Oh yeah, I don't even know how many we've done. Maybe longer because we've done.
Maybe longer. Yeah, because we've gone through the whole series of these. Yeah.
Yeah.
So every Thursday, you get to you get to hear us wax poetic, and sometimes it rhymes, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's an improvisational jazz.
It could we don't know. Yeah, let's see where
but
we
it's all focused around this thing that we call leadership. And what are the permutations and variations? And in both of our experiences, I think I speak for you when I say this. Leadership isn't really well understood in terms of not only what it can do, but what it is. It's the what it is piece that is the interesting one for us to unbundle. So that's where we've been kind of organizing these last several months. Then we're going to continue doing this. There's a whole body of work around this, a whole body of conversation. So but today we're going back to the beginning. I mean, going to the roots.
Yeah, I love that. Just kind of back to we talked about a lot of decisions and we talked about a lot of different topics, but I like let's just get back to
how mindset,
consciousness. Let's get back to it. So
how everything kind of unfolds. Leaders cause movement, and everything is moving, and nothing happens until something moves. And another way of beginning to think about that is everything is energy. Everything is moving all the time. Everything is energy. It's all energy. Even something static as my desk is moving. At a quantum level. All kinds of stuff going on there. So we're going to be exploring today this notion of consciousness as a first source. We think that we have free will. We think that we actually can decide on our behaviors. Nah, not really. Not really. There's something else at play. And as leaders, if we don't understand that there's something else available to us, we end up doing what 99.9% of the people on this planet do, creating current realities that are just similar iterations of what went on yesterday. And that's problematic. I mean, you're not going to scale a business by doing that.
No. And you kind of stumble through the end of the day and you end up, stumble through your week, stumble through your month, stumble through the year, and you kind of get to the other side of it and go, so what did I move? What actually moved? What happened?
What happened? What moved?
What moved? And if you're just kind of fumbling along, you don't know. You don't know.
Yeah. Just kind of where'd that happen and how did that happen? So there's a power that you can call you. And one of our very first episodes on this Power of You program organized around the notion of I am. Who's the I? Who's speaking here?
Right.
I know that my voice is emanating from this body. Air is moving through my vocal cords and it's vibrating and causing a sound that we call language. But who's the me that's actually triggering all of this?
Right.
Now, this is woo-woo, it's metaphysical. It's kind of like, is it practical? Actually, yes, it is. I'll let you
Oh
know.
goodness. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we'll unpack some of that stuff. Yeah, this will be a fun talk today because this is important stuff. I mean, I'll use the word stuff, not
Stuff.
the other word. But this is an important stuff because it is that declaration of I am and the wrapper that goes on that. It is that consciousness, which is the conversation for today. Consciousness.
And when we were putting this together, I've loved this in the book over my right shoulder here, in the conscious, compassionate capitalism. I actually go into some detail on the nature of quantum physics and its impact on what we call reality, particularly from an economic perspective.
Right.
How do we build our organizations? And Max Planck, for those of you that don't know him, Nobel Prize winning in physics. I think 1918 is when he won his Nobel. But he's genuinely and generally considered the father of quantum physics. And I love this quote. I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. Now, I want you to just stop and think about that particular sentence.
Yeah.
I regard matter, stuff that we touch, feel, see, taste, smell, hear, sound is matter, as derivative from consciousness. And from the quantum perspective, he said we can't get behind consciousness. Everything, from a reductionist perspective, which, physicists love to reduce things to the smallest thing. Mm-hmm. You get down to quarks, you get down to things that you can't even begin to imagine how small they are. You can't get behind this thing called consciousness. And this is where the observer effect comes into play here. Who's the observer? What's the observer? It may not even be a who. It's what observational dynamics in play here that is generating this thing that we call matter. Matter is just vibration slowed down to where it's fungible. We can touch it, feel it, taste it. That's all it is. Energy slowed down. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness. And that kind of goes full circle back to it's fundamental. Yeah. Consciousness is fundamental.
I love this statement. When I read this statement, I had to really stop and just close my eyes for a minute and think about it. But when you and you mentioned this earlier, just a couple of minutes ago, Blaine, about woo-woo, right? And we're going to get into this as it relates in particular to leadership. But this is a topic that is Max Planck talked about it, Wattles talks about it, Napoleon Hill talks about it. I mean, we could go on and on and on and on and on and on about.
Emerson talked about it.
Yeah.
The enlightened philosophers.
Right. Talked about it. It is regard matter as derivative from consciousness. Nothing happens until a thought occurs. Nothing happens until consciousness takes effect. And
so go ahead.
I was going to say, so I know as a leader, as you're watching this, you're kind of going, where the hell are these guys going with this consciousness thing? What is this about? Stay with us on this one. Yes. If you've not thought about this topic before, this topic is wide and deep. And go pick up, Think and Grow Rich, and go pick up Science Getting Rich. And go pick up these books. But this topic of consciousness is critically important as a leader in an organization, especially when you're delivering against. We're going to talk about for the sake of what. When you're delivering with that worthy ideal and the consciousness involved around that, and your people. So.
Yep. Yeah, the idea. Both Doland and I are proponents of meditation as a way to just kind of introduce creativity and innovation into your daily living. And for many people, they think that the goal of meditation is to quiet the mind. And that might or might not happen, but the mind's a really noisy place. And here's where this gets to be interesting. And I'll give an attribution here to Michael Singer on this. Mickey has, I love this quote: silence is not the absence of noise. Silence is the absence of self. Yeah. And if I take myself, my corporeal body, my thinking of the idea of Blaine Bartlett out of the equation, set Blaine Bartlett on a shelf. Now all I'm left with is a silence where consciousness can begin to emerge. And that still voice that the sages talk about, the gurus talk about, listen for that still voice. It will tell you what's next. That's where consciousness comes into play.
Right. Yeah. So well said. And so well, with meditate, equanimity comes in. There's all kinds of things that come into play in that. There is no silent voice.
Yeah.
There is no.
We got a blank slide. Where did the blank slide come from? Whoa.
I don't know. I think I probably inserted that just to,
Did you just to kind of see if we were on our toes here?
That's that means that's consciousness. There you go. Think of
that. You talk about stillness, the absence of self. It's the white slate. What am I observing? I observe that inner voice, and that inner voice begins to form.
I don't know.
Forming begins to generate material in my life.
Make it up as we go.
We're making this up. We're winging this. So
exactly.
But we've got a definition of leadership that we work with, and for those of you that again may not know who Doland and I are, we are sages. We are. What's the word that our PR people used? I was what? I was.
You're distinguished, and I'm seasoned.
Right, leader.
That was our yes.
We've got over 90 years of experience combined in working with this thing that we call leadership. So some could accuse us of knowing what we're talking about. But I wouldn't. That and $1.50 will get you a cup of coffee, maybe.
Maybe. Good luck.
But we have developed the definition of leadership, and it's not about telling people what to do.
Right.
It's not about cracking the whip. It's not about any of that stuff. It's not about carrot and stick. It's about influencing others. It's about state of being. And this is why consciousness becomes so important. Yeah. Your state of being, your mood state, your energetic state before you ever open your mouth sets things in motion.
Right.
People either run to the woodpile or they line up and they create what it is that you want.
Yeah.
And you got two choices there. Yeah. And it's a function of how you influence before you open your mouth.
Yeah. And that's before we do the rest of it, when we hook that into consciousness, we're talking about vibration, that influencing, that point of when there is a vibrational state. When you are walking down the street and you see somebody who's got a hoodie on and their head is down and you can't see their eyes or their teeth and their hands are clenched or in their pocket, there is a vibrational state that occurs that influences you to an action, which is probably going to be to cross the street.
Probably.
Right. But there is a vibrational state that occurs in influencing. And it is that consciousness, the awareness. So leaders cause movement. That's done through the activity of influencing others. What else do we do?
Well, in the process of doing that, you have the opportunity to co-create something, which is different than telling people what to do. And I'm going to sneeze right now because I got allergies going on. So I'll let you pick this one up while I might.
Blaine happens to live in a forest, and the whole forest we were using a different word, but the whole forest is permeating pollen everywhere. But co-creating is that act of relinquishing command and control as you're creating movement within the body of your team. And co-creating there's selflessness, vulnerability, consciousness involved in co-creating as part of it. But it is that collaboration, that trust that occurs between people to move towards a worthy ideal. We'll talk about what the worthy ideal, but you're doing it together. Command and control is assigning tasks. That is management. That is resourcing. And command and control happens in organizations. But from a leader's perspective, it is influencing others to co-create. We are doing this together. Coordinated, which is that how do we do this? How is this coordinated together? Which means we're vulnerable enough to ask questions. What is it that we need to do move forward to accomplish movement? So we're co-creating, coordinated, trusted, autonomous, communicated, worthy towards that movement, towards that worthy ideal. And we can talk about worthy ideal.
Yeah. And just right quick before we jump into that worthy ideal, and because the worthy ideal is what we connect on.
Yep.
And one of the things about consciousness is a recognition that everything in the universe is connected. Everything is connected
Yes.
in some
It's
way,
a
shape.
golden thread. Yeah, yeah.
So co-creating has to do with making it possible for people to resonate. And I'm going to talk, there's resonance, frequency start to line up. And when frequencies line up, now you've got something that's really powerful to work with. And that's where that coordinated movement is. And where, now you have an opportunity to coordinate, your movement. And I want to, we want to be sure that we don't miss this piece. You're working with people. People are squirrely. And they have preferences about how shit gets done. They
Who
do.
knew?
They
Exactly.
do, yeah. So coordinated movement isn't about singing Kumbaya. It's not about
No.
overarching and overwhelming harmony all the time. It's about the judicious use, the curated use of conflict. That's what coordinated movement is. It's the curated use of conflict.
Yeah.
Conflict creates heat, which cleans things, superfluous stuff away, and it also generates light because there's friction. Friction generates heat and it generates light. Yeah. So you want to curate this. What's too much? What's too little? You got too little, nothing's moving. You got too much, nothing's happening because the house is burning down. Okay. Right. So all of this is in pursuit of that worthy ideal. And that's the piece that oftentimes gets confused with vision. Vision is not the worthy ideal.
No.
And neither are your goals.
We're going to increase sales 10%.
Worthy ideal lives in this space that we call for the sake of what? For the sake of what? It's the answer to what matters. If we did this, why does that matter to you? Why does that make a difference? What do you get to have, do, or be that you wouldn't get to have, do, or be if we didn't do that?
Right.
That's what we're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. It is that ending statement. It's funny because I'll give a specific example. I'll give a tip of a hat to a company who shall remain nameless, your book team. I'll give them a little plug, a little shameless plug. When we talk about, one of the things that we focus on is in setting that when we co-created their goals this year together as a company, it was, we're going to go from here to here by this for the sake of. So it goes all the way out, not just I'm going to go from here to here by here. For the sake of. And everybody's bought it. And it's an exercise you got to go through, but everybody's bought in. It is not the vision.
Nope. Yeah. And interestingly, and I think, importantly, that for the sake of what is different for everybody.
Oh, goodness.
Everybody.
Yeah.
So, the objective here, and this is where consciousness matters. What is it that the observer in them is paying attention to?
Right.
That gives their life meaning because they're unique. So you end up with, if you've got a 10-person team, you end up with 10 distinct, different, for the sakes of what? Worthy ideals. But they're all held within this container of your vision, goals, objectives.
Right.
And that's where the real power and magic comes in. And that's when you're looking at creating coordinated movement, and when you're looking at co-creating, that's where the magic is.
Yeah. Powerful stuff.
Powerful stuff. And
powerful.
So when we're looking at consciousness as the first cause, as Max Planck would talk about it.
Yes.
What we're really doing is we're tapping into spirit. And when I say spirit, I don't mean this in a religious sense in any way, shape, or form. I'm talking about that creative element that if it wasn't there, I or we wouldn't exist. Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, all I am, all Doland is an idea. Now, we were an idea in our parents' minds, first of all, most likely. I mean, in many cases.
We can call it an idea.
Hold on. Yeah. An idea. And we pop out, and that idea now has a physical body.
Right.
And it's an ill-formed idea. But then it's that little body in the mind that is kind of part of that whole thing called Blaine Bartlett or Dolan White gets filled up, and it starts to get filled up with all kinds of extraneous shit. I mean, our family system stuff, values of the society we're born into, our language, all that stuff, before we're ever really conscious of being a unique individual. And so by the time we're about 3 years of old, 3 years of age, that consciousness of who I am has been informed by others saying, this is who I am.
Right.
And the rest of our life is spent unbundling that to a significant degree. So,
yes, indeed.
The problem with that gestational process is, for most people on this planet, that subconscious gets a lid put on it pretty tightly.
Right.
And that spirit that is who I am at the core doesn't get to pop through very frequently.
Right.
So when I think of consciousness as the first cause, fulfillment in life, not to be confused with success in life, because that's societally determined oftentimes, but fulfillment in life is the recognition that spirit has a voice, and that voice really wants to be heard and expressed. So that's kind of where this comes into play here. That's true of not only the individual, but it's also true of the organization that you're shepherding. The organization, your organization is just an idea. Your team is just an idea.
Right.
Consciousness gives it a voice, if you can hear it, about what it can become.
Yeah.
What it can become. And that's where this next line comes in about the future is an imaginal activity. The future is not set in stone in any way, shape, or form. We imagine our futures into reality. And for most people, the imaginal act is predicated on what happened yesterday. So it becomes a small iteration, or maybe an expanded iteration of what I'm already familiar with.
Right.
Most people stop imagining in the way that we're looking at imagining, tapping into spirit and having it be an expression of magnificence. That imaginal activity is drowned out in many cases. And that consciousness that informs who we are doesn't get a chance to thrive.
Right. It's funny you say that, because I think we have, and if leaders, as you're listening to this, I think you'll find, let's not think necessarily about ourselves, but let's think about the organization. Organizations are living, breathing entities. And they're living, breathing entities because you put people inside of them. And because we are living and breathing, it's a living and breathing entity. And as a leader, and inside of that body of the entity, we think of that, because Blaine, you were talking about, that 3-year-old, right? It's fun watching my granddaughters, right? One's 4, one's 2, and it's fun to kind of watch them, as they're discovering who they are and their identity, and the fact that I'm not allowed to sing girl princess songs, other kinds of things, right? So, but as we're going through that, as leaders, as we evolve, this is that precarious moment from a consciousness perspective. The first cause, we forget to imagine. We forget that we have that ability. Imagining creates events. But the future is an imaginal activity of man. We talked about this on our last call. We talked about in the 60s, Kennedy, what's it going to take to go to the moon? And the answer was, I'm going to butcher this. The answer was the will to do that, the will to get there.
Simply the will to do it.
How are we going to do it? Not an idea. No clue. But we've got the will to do it. That imagination to drive that, and do that from a conscious perspective. Imagining creates that event.
Yeah, the philosopher Carl Jung talked about the imagination lives at the threshold of the spirit.
Yes.
It's the gateway into
Great
consciousness.
Quote.
Imagination is the gateway. It's the door that allows consciousness to be expressed. And consciousness is creative. It's energy in movement. Mm-hmm. Yeah, energy in movement. And you want to be paying particular attention to how you imagine. And part of this has to do, and this is where this next line comes in, inner speech calls events into existence. How do I talk to myself? How do I talk to myself? Yeah, for most people, again, we don't allow ourselves to imagine the future. What would I love? Well, I don't know. I just know what I don't want. I do. Well, what would you love to have? I don't know. Okay, imagine it. 3:00 in the morning, that voice that kicks in. That's the one that will call events into existence. And it's typically, for most people, iterations of what's gone on before. I'm not the kind of person who can, I shouldn't, I couldn't. Mom said I wasn't capable. I mean, all of that stuff is present in that 3 a.m. conversation. Inner speech is consciousness being activated, and you don't know what it is because it's oftentimes out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
But it's running all the time.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned it, because it is that power of the I am statement. I am. It's that declarative, right? And I am is a dual-edged sword. I am tired. And I am overwhelmed. I am overwhelmed. Declarative statement, right? And it is that to your, and I think everybody has that. And we'll kind of, boy, we could do a whole nother one just on, we'll use the generic term imposter syndrome.
Imposter,
right? Fear, uncertainty, doubt, all that stuff that comes along. And everybody has that. It is that declarative moment. And every human has those things that play. I've met a lot of people who have said, "Oh, that never happens to me." And my answer to that is,
yeah, right.
Bullshit. So I can say it's Thursday. I can say that.
You can say it. Thursday's permission.
But it's true, because inner speech calls those events into existence. The way you talk to yourself, the way you speak that declarative statement creates that. It impedes or improves imagining that moves forward. It's that gateway to spirit. It is that gateway.
Yeah. And what closes that door is, to your point, the imposter syndrome. Yeah, I'm not qualified to do this. Who am I to think that I could pull that off? Who am I to, so I can only be qualified to do that which I've already accomplished or trained for. That's the only thing I'm qualified to do.
Yep.
It says so right there. And if it says so, it must be true.
We got it off the internet, so therefore it has to be right.
Therefore it's just the way it is. But truly, we are only qualified to do what we've trained for, what we've already accomplished, and what we've trained for. Anything new is accomplished by unqualified people. We've never been here before. We've never done it this way before. Who says we can't? Well, you're not qualified. Yeah, that's right. I'm not. That's where consciousness is the first cause, is the imaginal act. What if I could do it? When I'm on the teaching faculty of the American Association for Physician Leadership. And I remember sitting at my desk years ago. I've been on the faculty now for 15 years, maybe more than that. 18 years, I think. I don't have a background in medicine. The only thing that I knew about a hospital was I was born in one, because I'd never been in one outside of that. And I sat at my desk and I was noticing what are some emerging trends, and healthcare seemed to be one that could be a lucrative one. I mean, just from a business perspective, I was like, that'd be kind of interesting. Who do I know, and what could I do, and where could I do it, and how? I'm not qualified. I don't have any degreed background in medicine, but I started imagining, and fascinating. I saw myself giving lectures. I saw myself talking to docs and hospital administrators. In about 6 weeks, I got a letter from this organization called, they've changed their name now, but the precursor, the former incarnation of the American Association for Physician Leadership.
Okay.
And they said, we're putting together a leadership program in conjunction with some work at Harvard. Would you be interested in collaborating with us on that? And I went, yeah.
Sure.
Who, me? Yeah.
What?
I'm not qualified, but okay. And we've been running that program. It's called Leadership Authenticity. We've been running that program for doctors and for hospital administrators for 18 years now.
Yeah.
It's one of the best programs that AAPL offers. So this idea of consciousness, that voice that opens up, and before you close it back down going, you want to listen to it. Consciousness is always speaking to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It is courage. It is that courage.
Courage, yeah.
Yeah. So
And
this, go ahead.
no,
You
you
are,
go for it. Yeah.
I just was going to jump
I'm gonna
in. So,
see
you know, as we kind of come through that first cause, as we expand on first cause, and you know, this is we kind of started this with, you know, okay, these boys are going to be talking about this woo-woo stuff, and there's vibrations and things are in motion, and Schrodinger cat, is the cat dead or is it alive? Where is the cat? So as we're looking at, we're talking about this from a leadership's perspective about consciousness, the first cause. When you think about it, I love these statements. Consciousness drives culture through intentional presence. Consciousness provides consciousness creates intentionality, and intentionality connects to, it's your presence. It is, we talked a little bit about that from a leadership. When you show up, it is your presence, but presence is well beyond the way you show up. Presence is continuity, it's consistency, it's continuous, it's providing context, but it is that opportunity to be in the position as a leader where you're driving the culture, not the climate, the culture of your organization, to accept it, where you're taking your organization by intentionally being present, conscious leading, intentionality, and being there.
You know, the word consciousness, I mean, if we were going to assign, to treat it as a noun, it's the observer.
Oh, yeah.
It's the observer.
That's great.
Consciousness is the observer. So, and it's not the egoic observer. It's the universal observer. That universal observer, and it does drive culture through presence. It creates space for innovation. If you're listening to it, it's the observer that's calling things into action, calling things into causing things to move, and that, you know, aligning process begins to occur, because now you've got a voice that is saying, "Hey," because every idea wants to be expressed fully,
Right.
just partially, fully. And that's why we use vision, because there's iterations. Yeah. Bob Proctor, our friend and mentor, Bob, we won't go into Bob, but connecting the dots. You can't connect the dots looking backward. You can only connect them forward. You can only connect them looking backwards.
Right.
And, it was a Steve Jobs quote, but Bob used to reference that a lot. And one of the things he used to say to both of us in a number of different times, I can remember him saying this to me, is, God, if I'd known how these dots connected, I would have thought much bigger.
Yes.
I would have listened to that voice in a different way. I would have, because it's iterative. It's always fully expressing itself. And we've got a model that we've developed that I call the goal model. Goal. The purpose of a goal is to grow. Grow for the sake of what? And that grow is a goal that I have not a bloody clue in the world about how to achieve. It's one that kind of came out of the ether. It just kind of popped into my head as an idea, as a thought, and now I can't let go of it. I'm like a dog with a bone. That's where a vision and action start getting aligned. The observer in me paid attention to that resonance and went, that I'm going to do. I'm going to be. I'm going to do. I'm going to have that.
Yeah, I love. Yeah, we could completely digress on that. But yeah, it's funny because when you hadn't thought about it that way, though, Blaine, you said something about not the egoic, but using consciousness, right, as that noun, consciousness as this thing, right? It enhances decision making. So when you think about that, it becomes conscious, right? When we did a whole, if you guys ever get bored, those of you guys that are watching this, go back a few posts and you can watch a 6-series Power of You on decisions. But we went all the way around the circle on how to make a decision. And they all tied into consciousness, by the way, which we didn't say at that point in time, and that is words. But it is that enhancement that follows from a decision. I'm looking to I need to make a decision around movement, right? And I'm going to co-create this. I'm going to coordinate this. I'm going to influence, do all this. There's a decision involved in the process. and it creates consciousness, adds that perspective to that decision. And same thing. One of the things that I had a great conversation with a client this morning around was vulnerability and the benefits of vulnerability. Consciousness, by being conscious and leveraging consciousness, you create that culture, create that environment, create that business, create that life, create whatever you're growing, creates that models that growth through vulnerability. And vulnerability is that willingness to trust. I'm willingness to be I'm willing to admit I don't know it all. I'm willing to learn. And you talked about it's that innovative moment. Do I know how? I have no clue.
Because my ego is going to get attached to what was. The ego is status quo oriented and organized.
Just like that. Oh yeah. I'm going to make a diamond out of this thing.
Yeah. So growth comes from, in this conversation, from detachment.
Yeah.
What was. It's that willingness to be open, vulnerable, that allows for that voice, that consciousness to speak what needs to be heard. And that can include a new how. It definitely will include a new what.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we get off the rails on this, and this is kind of a checklist for just about every organization on the planet today, there are symptoms of not paying attention to consciousness as an observational phenomenon.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny because we want to be able to. There's many more symptoms. If we use the word symptoms, because symptoms are things that we should be watching for. I'm watching for symptoms. I'm watching for these things, and it's inside of your organization and in your life. These are also happen in your life, by the way. You struggle to make bold decisions or to cast a vision. Well, I'm just going to wait and see. We talked about that. Let's see what happens tomorrow. I'll decide tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where that for the sake of what becomes really important. If you don't have that locked in, it's easy to default to inaction.
Yeah.
It truly is.
You have no idea. Yeah.
What that we talk about resonance. I mean, what vibe? I mean, again, woo-woo, but what vibrates in my heart? What moves me? When I tap into that for the sake of what at a personal level, I can't not do this. I can't not move because it's so present in me.
Right.
And that will influence how I make decisions. It's kind of like I can't not make a decision here.
Right. It's funny you mentioned that because you said this in passing, and I want to go back to it just to pin this, the words that you said and the importance of the words. And it is what would you love?
Mm-hmm.
And most people in their life or in their leaders or in their organization or in their team or in their don't start with what would you love?
Right.
Don't start there.
Yep.
We start with what do I need to do?
Or what can I afford? Or what am I?
And 1,000 reasons why I'm not going to do this. Well, I can't buy that because I can't. What would you love? And that worthy ideal is inspired, becomes inspirational. Yeah. So, and number 2, reactive instead of intentional leadership, right? You're putting out fires. This happened. Boy, have I got examples this week.
Oh boy, yes, you do.
Yes, I do this week. But you're putting out fires. You're constantly putting out fires, right? Rather than focusing on, again, let's look at number 1, right? Struggles to make bold decisions or cast visions, which creates that trickle down symptom of, I'm going to always be putting out fires because I'm not focusing on my for the sake of what? That strategic outcome that I'm moving forward towards. I have not consciously created that.
And a lot of this derives from the fact, and it really is a demonstrable fact, I think, that most leaders and most managers identify themselves as problem solvers. And because they identify themselves as a problem solver, they get paid for solving problems. You're always going to, by definition, always have to have a problem in order to justify your existence. This is a consciousness thing. but also,
Yeah.
yeah, it really is. Who
Yeah,
am
it is.
I? I am a problem solver. Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm a solution seeking a problem. Yeah.
That's yeah. So you have enough problems that we need a full-time person to solve that. Okay.
Okay, that's what I remember. I was doing some work with Bethlehem Steel years ago. Bethlehem Steel is now out of business.
Oh yeah.
But I was doing some work on in the plant with a group of maintenance people. We had this whole project that we were doing that was around saving money and blah blah blah, all kinds of stuff. A traditional consulting project. And these guys saw themselves as problem solvers. I mean, that's what they did. The alarm would sound, and they prided themselves on being great problem solvers. Well, part of the difficulty was we were trying to introduce a preventive maintenance program that would mitigate problems, that would kind of make them go away. You could not believe the resistance we got from these guys in implementing this. It made, logical business case sense to have these maintenance programs. It's kind of like, no, we can fix it if it goes sideways. Well,
right.
That's the problem. It's going sideways. Anyway.
I'm sorry, I just chuckled because, yep. What do you mean? What do you mean there's not going to be? That's what I do.
Always putting out fires is a sign that spirit does not have a place in the room.
Yes.
Because you're trying to hold on to something.
Yeah.
You're trying to hold on to something instead of creating a new future for yourself.
Yeah. And if we look at, we'll go quickly through the other two because everybody's read this slide now for a minute or two. But you know what? But negative or defeating inner dialogue. It is. We were talking a little bit about that. How we speak to ourselves. How we speak to ourselves. Remember, as a leader looking at this, these are not just your symptoms. These are symptoms you are looking for, you're listening for. Because as a conscious leader, you're aware, you're tuned in, and you're listening for self-doubt. You're listening for imposter syndrome. You're listening for second guessing. You're hearing those. You're feeling the vibration. I don't think I've ever told you the story. At one point in time, I was going to write a book called Spider Management. I happen to love spiders. Sad, but true.
I say nothing.
I know. Fascinated by spiders. But when you think of an orb weaver, what does an orb weaver do? An orb weaver sits in the middle of the web.
Yep.
And it feels a web around it that's strung by strings that do what? They vibrate.
Mm-hmm.
And the orb weaver's intention is to sit on the web and they feel the web. They feel the web. They're in tune to the vibration and they're looking to feel for something to eat, right? Because it's primal, right?
Yeah.
They're carnivores. So they're looking for something, they're watching for something to eat. And it's fun. If you throw a leaf onto the web, they don't move. If you throw a moth onto the web, they move. So as a leader, and you're tuned, when I mention being tuned in, I don't want you to think of your office. It's sad. Don't get spiders and put them in your office. But think of that from that demonstrative. We've talked a lot about vibrational state. Think of that from that vibrational state. Consciousness is the gateway to that ability to be tuned in. Be tuned in. Listen for these things. Listen in your organization. Listen to hesitation. Listen for hesitation.
You are a finely tuned, each one of us is a finely tuned, some more than others, receiver, information receiver. We're taking this sensory data in multiple channels and it gets processed. I mean, reality doesn't exist out there. Reality exists in here. Mm-hmm. Reality exists in here. So how we interpret makes a big difference. And part of the thing that comes into play with this, it has to do with perspective. Perspective is not an assessment of reality. Perspective is a manifester of reality. It's a manifester of reality. What's my perspective? Okay. What's my perspective and what does it set in motion? That perspective is informed by a couple of voices. One is the egoic voice that is acculturated. The other is that very quiet voice that doesn't get a lot of airtime. You want to find more and more ways to have that little voice become louder and louder, because that's the true potential. That's the true creative spirit that allows for magical things to occur. It gets drowned out by that other perspective generator, which is your ego.
Yeah.
Which is
that
why
other
you
one
start
sitting on the shoulder. No,
sitting
go
on
ahead.
the
I was going to
shoulder.
say, sitting on the shoulder, whispering in your ear.
Yep. Yeah. So that's the proven. Yeah, we've done it this way before. We've always done it this. Let's do it that way again. Or I've got this credential. You should listen to me. I'm an expert in this. I know how this is done. Yeah. And over reliance on credentials are proven paths. Yeah. Yeah. It stops us from being creative. It drowns out that spirit voice, not spiritual voice, but the spirit voice, that creative voice that's going, hey, remember that you loved this? Let's go do that.
Yeah. Remember how good it felt?
Yeah.
Remember that? Remember how comfortable that is?
You've been here before.
I don't want to, don't make me lose weight.
Don't make me do that.
No. Yeah, exactly.
So,
symptom.
There you go. That, this is a rich, deep topic. We can ask, what's next for you here? What kind of next steps? And part of the reason we do this Power of You series is to pique people's interest in developing themselves as leaders. We're all leaders. We lead in every aspect of our life. Unfortunately, most people are not particularly adept at leading well. They don't cause the kind of movement they need in their lives to get the results that they say they want, beginning with themselves. And a large part of that has to do with this notion of consciousness. What am I not listening to? Right. And what am I listening to that's derailing me? 95%, truly, and studies show this, 95% of an adult's behavior is generated and controlled by the subconscious mind. It's out of sight, it's out of awareness, conscious awareness, and it drives almost 95% of our behaviors. We try to do different things with 5% consciousness, consciously directed behavior. That's why I said right at the very beginning, the idea of free will, the idea of free choice. Yeah, bullshit. Something else is driving it. And you don't know what it is. You want to know.
It never sleeps.
And it never sleeps. 3 o'clock in the morning, it's going, kitty.
Have I got something for you? Exactly.
So
yes,
we want to invite you to consider doing something with this. I mean, Tony Robbins. And if you haven't taken action, you haven't made the decision. There's a time that we reach in our lives where we have to act on a decision we've already made. And for most people, that doesn't happen until they're long in the tooth and gray in the hair. Act on a decision that you've already made to be who you are. Is fully alive as you can possibly be. Some people never get there. Some people just, the whole idea of RIP on the tombstone, retired in place, not rest in place. It's retired in place.
Yeah.
Most people are retired in place.
It's funny. It made me stop for a moment too. There's a Tony Robbins quote: "The road to nowhere leads to it." Oh God, I just closed it. I'll find it and I'll say it again next time. I'm going to interrupt it. I'm going to interrupt the flow. Just a Tony Robbins quote that popped in my head. I saw this week, but anyway.
So we've got a mastermind program that this consciousness conversation literally takes up a full month. I mean, we will take a full month on the front end of a year-long program. Looking at consciousness first of all, but then we start moving into awareness, into communication mastery, into the nature of commitment, into the idea of trust, into the idea of meaning making, context. How do you define it and work with it? All of that comes into play here. It's a deep dive. The intent on the Leadership Mindset Mastermind, and again, it's a year-long program, is for you to excel, not at strategy and tactics, but at mastering mindset. you've got processes and procedures and systems in place in your company. You're not going to scale well until mindset is mastered. I will guarantee that. Absolutely guaranteed.
Yeah.
So if you want to scale your business, if you want to scale your success in life, you have to master the mastermind. I'm sorry, you have to master the mindset.
I was with you on that.
Master the mindset.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what this program is designed to do, and it's focused on leadership. Just kind of generically, how do you lead yourself, and then as a consequence of that, lead your team, lead your organization into a full expression of what's possible.
Yeah.
So that's the invitation.
Yeah.
There's a wait list. We do this a couple times a year. We've got two of them that run a year. Doland and I teach this every week. So feel free to check it out. Go to this URL, and I think more information than you'll ever want is present on that page.
Yeah.
But we'd love to have you at least ask us a question about it. So feel free to, no obligation. Just say, hey, I'd like to get more information about this. I'm going to join the wait list, and that wait list is about getting a call with Doland and myself.
Yeah.
We will explore this with you.
And for those of you leaders who are used to sharp angle close on, go to this Reg page and put your money in there. This is a curated group.
Yep.
So it will require a conversation. So come get curated. If you've never been curated before, it's an experience. Get curated. So,
curiously curated.
I would recommend that. Get curiously curated.
Yes.
Well, I've enjoyed this. This has been fun talking about consciousness.
Yeah.
It's a good.
So check us out. Check it out. And play with the notion that consciousness is a noun, and that noun has to do with observation. Who's the observer observing your life? Who's the observer that is setting things in motion in your life? That's where consciousness comes into play. It is the first cause. You can get behind everything in this universe except consciousness.
Yeah. Ditto.
What he said.
Go do that. Whatever he said.
We do this every Thursday at noon.
Come join us. Ish. So today was an ish.
Yep. Today was an ish.
Both our schedules made it an ish today. So,
but tune in. This is live on LinkedIn, live on YouTube, live on Facebook, live on
all over the place.
Instagram,
millions and millions. 1 million.
Sorry.
So yeah, do join us. We'll see you next Thursday. Great topic.
Have a great rest of your week.
We got more for you next week. See you then. Thanks.
Take care.
Dr. Bartlett.
Dr. White. Mañana.
See.